Good evening. Hello. How are you? This is Demetria with Vantage Point Coaching. And tonight I am joined by Alexia Suarez and Nicole Demaris to have a conversation about generations in the workplace. So we hope that you sit back, relax, get into the conversation in the comments. We want you to be involved, ask questions. Also, if you would like and share this broadcast for those who might be interested in this conversation, we think that it is a worthwhile venture to really dive into some of the not only challenges, but the great opportunities that are available to us when we, especially as women, three generations of women in the workplace, when we can work together and make great things happen. So, ladies, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So first things first, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you currently do. So I'll start with you, Alexia.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. I'd like to begin first by acknowledging that I am in Seattle on Duwamish tribe land, and just acknowledging, and I wouldn't be here without this opportunity and to acknowledge everything. And I'm very grateful for everything that's brought me. So hi, I'm Alexia. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a branding and marketing specialist at Social Bee, and I also have my own company, Alexia Suarez LLC.
All right, fantastic. And Nicole.
Hi. So yes, the Millennial, that's me. My name is Nicole Demaris, and I actually am the owner of Social Bee Marketing Communications. And yeah, that's what I do. I do a little bit of everything. I also own a fitness studio by the name of NDG. Well, it's an online fitness studio now, but by the name of NDG Fit. But Social Bee Marketing Communications Business Development it's my everything. It's what I do every day, all day, all the time.
Fantastic. Well, you know me, but I'll introduce myself. So again, for those who may not know me, and you just might be tuning into this, I'm Demetria Hill Sloan. I'm the founder and president of Vantage Point Coaching. And I happen to be working with, I'm an executive leadership coach, life coach. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. I do lots of things. I wear many hats. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister, all that stuff, and a good friend. But I've been working with Social Bee as I'm moving and transitioning and the growth of my own business and tapping into the marketing expertise of others, because that's one thing you have to know, regardless of what generations, where your skill set ends and you need to tap into the skill sets of others. And so as we were working together the other day and talking about some things, I was like, you know what? This would make a great conversation. This would make a great live talk to discuss what it's like working with three generations in the workforce. And so that's what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about, is generations at work. Now, who we don't have represented today is the baby boom generation, which is still a very large percentage of the workforce, especially at the highest levels in corporate America. So many, although there are many young CEOs, still in a lot of leadership roles, it's still dominated by the baby boom population. But many of them are beginning to retire. And so for me, my generation, Gen X, our years, the range is from 1965 to 1979/80. So we're in that good middle age group, middle management group in some places, some leadership group, but we are also a smaller generation than the baby boomers. So because there was a lot less children born because of the advent of all the great things, birth control and what have you. We are a smaller generation. So we have this glut of baby boomers over here, this glut of millennials. And then there's this little bitty group in the middle who often is overlooked and overshadowed and not even talked about anymore. They group everybody into millennials. Gen Z, you should be tired of being categorized as a millennial too, because you're like, no, I'm not. I'm separate, right?
But you're like the middle child. You're the middle child of everything.
Middle child, yes, for sure. And so the millennial group, that's Nicole's group, as she said, 1981 to 1996. A really large in terms of population size, demographic. They are really leading the way in many areas. And they also, she said, she does a lot of things. They're always doing the most. That's no
nice. Yep.
No.
And then we have Gen Z, who Alexia is representing today. And that's like the 1996, 97-ish to 2012-ish. So their age range is like, we have some really young millennials, like would be like 8, 9 years old, up until in their 20s. And, you know, for me, I'm like, ooh. Like, because I have 2 children in this Gen Z, generation here. So, but let's talk about it, ladies. Let's talk about what it's like having all these generations at work. But, you know, I think some of the things that help how we show up to the workplace is how we were shaped and how we were formed, and some of the things that really influenced our generation. So I know for me, my generation, we were a very large group of latchkey kids. You know, we were the age where women really started really entering in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, really entering the workforce professionally, leaving home. You know, we grew up when we were little kids and shaped when Oprah became, burst onto the scene. We were defined by Oprah. We also were defined by the Challenger, the NASA Challenger explosion, you know, and those were things that really shaped our generation, in addition to, you know, Reaganomics, some of the things that really influenced and shaped our generation. But we definitely, we were the go outside, play outside till the street light comes on. If you're home, don't answer the door, you know, but we had to learn how to be very independent, very resilient, and really take care of ourselves. And that's some of the things that shaped my generation. Nicole, what about you, the millennials? What are some of the things that really shape your generation?
So for me, I'm on what they consider the older end of millennials, since I was born in 83. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna be honest, even up until probably a few years ago, because my husband is technically a Gen Xer. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I remember, like, I, in a sense, feel like I grew up with Gen Xers for the most part. Everything from music, the same thing, playing outside until the streetlights came on. We had that same kind of rule. Same rule, don't answer the door if you have to hold yourself, things like that. But I think, I know from my experience and even some of my friends, we were definitely taught, and it could be from where I'm from, because I am from Harlem, New York, born and raised. You're kind of taught really early to be independent, to go out, to make your own money, to do your thing, to never really have to depend on anyone else. And again, it could just be that, you know, like the New York style of just that way of life in New York. But I don't even think it's that, because even living here in Washington, when I do meet other millennials, because there's a lot of them here, depending on where they're from, a lot of them kind of have the same type of attitude. It's that I'm going to go and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to be more than what my parents were. I'm going to definitely not, you know, have to worry about money in a sense. I want to own my own business. I want that freedom. I want financial freedom more than anything else. So, yeah, I think I consider us the go-getter generation. And I know that Gen Z is like right behind us, but I feel like we started that whole, we gonna go get it. and we're going to do it the way we want to do it. That's pushing kids off to later. That's getting married later. That's everything. We're going to do it the way we want to do it. And when we're ready to do it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What about you, Alexia? What are some things that shaped your generation?
So we're also still shaping, like I'm on the oldest end of the spectrum. I'm 97, so I'm 23, and there's like 9-year-olds. So I don't know what they're going to be up to, but they have some more life to live. As like an old Gen Z, I guess like honestly, like 9/11, just the aftermath of it and just understanding like a very policed like kind of society, and also the COVID pandemic that has really shaped my generation, and like our ability to communicate outside of just like regular means and like through TikTok and understand all of that, and like the getting more into like politics and also very into technology, and just we feel as though like my generation, I think I like us the best, but I may be biased. Of like, I really think that since a young age, we've kind of understood the world around us, just because we have the access to internet and access to friends, and we talk about very hot topic things from a young age, like MTV, Jersey Shore, all that was on when I was young. So we were talking about that when I was like 8, which probably isn't appropriate, but like I'm learning the world outside of just like cartoons. So I think like we've been just very active from a young age, and we have a lot of young activists rising up, and it's just like we found this like agency within our young way of being, and we really rode with it, and I really like that about us.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of that. So one of the nicknames for your generation is the I generation. And, you know, whether it's an Apple, an iPhone, the iPad, I mean, the original iPod, like they don't even make iPods anymore. But look, I even have I still have an iPod mini right here, you see?
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, the dinosaur.
Yeah, right. Right, dinosaur. She called this a dinosaur. For anybody out there in my generation, please comment, because we probably have. I did finally at least, you know, trade off the iPods that I had, because we don't need them anymore, you know. But yeah, you know, one of the things my generation is technically adapt, but we have seen such as a rapid change in technology. So where you all were born with the iPhones in your hand and being connected to the internet and knowing what email was. I mean, I remember when it was like, oh, this is the World Wide Web. Like, this is a whole new thing where you can log on to and communicate with people. So for my generation, we have seen such rapid technological advances, from, you know, the beta to the VCR to the DVD, and now everything is streaming. So for your generation, you're like, CDs, what's a CD? I mean, I had someone who worked for me once, one of my sales reps. She was like, well, what's an album? And I was like, oh my gosh.
I had my roommate explain what a floppy disk was, because honestly, I didn't know. And then they brought it up, and I was just like, what are you talking about? And there's like these little discs that go in your computer and they hold things. I was like a USB? And they're like, no, like before that. And like, it was just so like,
before USB, before a diskette. Yes, there was.
It had like 8 things on it, like just like 8 pieces of paper. And I'm like, what's the point? Like, so
as a millennial, that's the whole thing. Like, as a millennial, we actually remember that. When I started college, we were still using floppy disks. And I started college in 2002. So we were still using floppy disks at that point in time. So yeah, like, millennials have it hard because we are, in a sense, it's like we understand everything that Gen Xers, we understand everything about a Gen Xer. And like I said, especially if your parent, depending on when your parents had you, which mine had me when they were 16 and 17 years old, I grew up with them. So everything that they went through in the 90s, I went through with them. Even I remember, which I'm surprised by, but certain things in the 80s, I went through with them. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a couple of comments here. Not a dinosaur. Gen X, we will not go quietly in the night. They're trying to knock us off. We saw the most progress in the shortest time. Absolutely. Like we've seen the most progress. It says, I feel like the millennial generation is more make changes from within by doing work, whereas Gen Z is very make changes from within and advocate for those changes to others as well. That's a good, very good observation. One of the things that you talked about was the activism, and we've been seeing the activism of Gen Z and millennials on display in this last year. So you touched a little bit, Alexia. You said how really this pandemic, your generation has definitely been shaped by wars and pandemic, like you said, from 9/11, then we were in Iraq, we were in Afghanistan, we've been in Iraq and Afghanistan ever since you were born and still are to this day. And then having this global pandemic, how does that weigh
where's
on,
the good times? Where's the good times?
where does that weigh on? How does that weigh on your generation, and how is it shaping as you go into the workplace and the workforce? And really, you guys work by your own rules. You kind of the gig society. You're like products of the gig society. So yeah, how is that shaping how you go to work?
It shapes, I think, in the way that I am perceived. It comes off a little differently because Gen Z, we're known as being a little more aggressive than other generations. And the way we come off is a little more in your face and abrupt when we don't really necessarily mean it that way. It's just more of this is very important to us and this needs to be changed now. My generation has a big urgency on now and change happening now because we've seen through other generations of change not happening soon enough. And it's getting to a point of climate change and everything, where it's this is affecting us now and it needs to change now. So this doesn't affect us later. I think it's 7 years that the planet might burn or something. So we have a big urgency on just now and wanting things to be better. So our future kids don't ever have to deal with any of these things that we're dealing with. And yeah, war, pandemic, recession, all of that. It's just we've never seen the real good times. And we'd like to see that in our lifetime, please.
Yeah. Well, Lena is joining in. She says Gen Z seem to mirror the boomers in their civil rights and their advocacy. And that has definitely been said, that the Gen Zers are very, very similar to the baby boom generation. So what I hope that you all is hold on to that, because the baby boomers kind of, they were sex, drugs, and rock and roll and freedom and burning bras and women's movement and all of these things, the civil rights movement, they were all doing all of these things. And then, I think they did get a little comfortable along the way. And then she says, Gen Xers, we're sending a donation from work. Right. Because that's what we've been conditioned. It was you go to work, you work, you stay at work. And that's really what we did. We mastered the art of working. And then came along these millennials who are okay, we're already burnt out. We're burnt out at 25.
And a lot of it is, okay, granted, yes, we are burned out. I will say that. But kind of like Gen Z, remember 9/11, I was in high school. Mm-hmm. The first recession, I just got out of college. Then I go into work and I had to figure that out, which was me figuring out work for myself with that whole, you got to take care of yourself mentality. So the thing is, it's we're burnt out because just like you guys, from the very minute we became adults, we, in a sense, had to hustle harder than we've ever had to hustle before. We are very afraid of where Gen Xers, where you go to work, you make your money, you make it work, you have your kids, you retire, things like that. For us, we seen through Gen Xers that not that, I don't want that lifestyle. And then on top of it, none of that's guaranteed. Look what just happened in 2008. All these people, lost their jobs. Now we have to really figure it out for ourselves. So yeah, we're burned out because, like myself, one stream of income isn't enough. Even in a 2-income household where, you got people, that are making like $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And sometimes it's still not enough depending on where you live. So we're constantly working and working and working in order to live the life that we want to live, to be able to do the things that we want to do, unafraid of losing or having someone pull a job up from under us to where we then have nothing. So we're trying to make it on our own so we have the security, but it's hard and it's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's transition a little bit and talk a little bit more about, well, what do you expect in the workplace or from your workplace? Because it's very different. I know for Gen Xers, we wanted to, have a good retirement plan, which, that's been shaky lately. But really, that's part of what we were conditioned to do. It was, you go to school. That was first, right? It was go to school, go to work, get married, 2.5 children, picket fence, dog, retire, go on vacation every once in a while, and trust me, we had our good party times. The 90s were a great party time because that's when we were really coming into our own as adults. We had great time in the 90s, but generally it was just kind of like, this is the pattern, and this is the pattern that you follow. And then yes, we did have some the rug taken out from under us as we watched how where you were younger when the crack epidemic really racked the community. We were a little older when the crack epidemic was wrecking the community, and just saw the devastation and destruction that it did. And so, but our expectations about the workplace were just very, very static. Some of us still, I have clients now, talking to a client earlier, it's like, we let our vacation days lapse, I'm losing this many days of vacation because I didn't take enough days off. And a millennial and a Gen Z are like, vacation, I'm out. Anytime I can take one. And here we are. We're just working, accumulating days, and not taking off. And y'all like, I'm gone.
I'm out real quick.
So, but, we didn't really have expectations in the workplace because we were taught in conditions that we couldn't have expectations of the workplace. Our generation, we were now there's the Me Too movement, but we were the generation that suffered in silence through inequality and justice. And it was just like, just word, put your head down, just everybody, they're going to recognize you for your worth. And no, it doesn't work like that. Right. Yeah. So, yeah. So Nicole, I'll go throw this one to you first. What do you as a millennial expect in the workplace?
Well, I expect everything to be brought up into this current moment in time. So for instance, I'm a director also at a hospital, and healthcare, it's depending on where you are. Some things are very archaic, systems and things like that. So when wherever I'm working, even when it's my own companies, I expect that we're all aware of today and how things work today as far as technology is concerned. That's number one. I'm really surprised when people don't know how to work technical things, a computer, a laptop, a phone. It's confusing and weird to me. But then when it comes to like teams, I'm a part of senior leadership. So with senior leadership, I work with a lot of Gen Xers, and sometimes it's that do as I say. And just that do as I say, like I said it, so it's right. And I'm right. And I'm just like, well, no, you're not right. And we can also do it this way, which will be easier. Mm-hmm. So I look for teams that are inclusive of understanding everyone that's on the team, understanding where everyone's at in life on the team, understanding that there are better and easier ways to do things, and not look at the fact that because I'm younger than you, that you know better. And I feel like that happens in every generation. That's going to happen with me and Gen Xers. That's going to happen with Generation Z and Millennials. Everyone who's older feels like they know better, But I typically go into all of my workspaces understanding, and it is because I'm a business owner. As a business owner, you hire people to do the things that either you don't know how to do or you don't have time to do. So I'm looking for people who are going to look at me as I'm valuable and I can bring something. I'm here to help the team. I'm not here to take your job because more than likely I don't want it. And I'm usually very vocal with that. So.
Okay, I'm trying to type. I got a tickle in my throat here. I'm to. But I heard, a couple things that really stood out about inclusive teams, knowledge of technology, and doing things smarter. Really, that's a better word. Yeah, just smarter, faster, better. Lena said you should try working for an try working with dealing with a boomer. She's dealing with some baby boomers in her workplace, right? As a Gen Xer. So yeah, it's very interesting. What about you, Alexia? What are some of the things that you expect in or from your workplace?
Okay, well, number one, y'all got me on a call with my boss. So
I knew that was going to come out.
But I guess what being the oldest, I guess, Gen Z, so like my counterparts are like 12. So being the oldest and trying to lead the way, I guess I expect a very collaborative, inclusive environment in which I enter. Like an example, like I've done a couple internships across the country, and I'm from the West Coast, and it really shows. Like I have a nose ring, I have tattoos and everything. And then going into those environments, like, oh, you have a nose ring? Like, you're very brave. And I'm just like, what about it? I totally forgot I had it in. So just like that, like inclusivity without like thinking it's like weird aspect, being collaborative. And then also as Gen Z, we are very like opinionated and very like out there with our opinions. And just having that met with respect rather than like, oh, you're young and you don't know anything type of attitude. I guess that's been like the biggest for me coming into the working. I can't speak for all generations or below me because we're like 12. So yeah, I think we just really inclusivity and also wanting to be having passion towards what we're doing is a very important aspect of Gen Z. We want to be excited to go to work every day. We want to feel as though like we're contributing and we're making a difference, whether it be like like me doing marketing. I feel like I'm making a difference for brands and businesses, and I help empower others. Or like it could be honestly anything. Like we just want to feel valued and heard, and regardless of age and status that other generations had to deal with.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? Go ahead, Nicole.
And I was going to say, I feel like we all go through that, regardless of the generation that we're in. Again, it's that thing to where we enter the workspace young. We enter it in every generation in our 20s. You graduate college and you go get a job, and there's always your boss is more than likely older than you, or your peers are older than you. And yeah, sometimes people just, the pure fact that you are in your 20s, people tend to just be like, oh, you're young, you don't know yet, or you're young, you don't have the experience. And I'm at fault for doing that sometimes, not with you, Alexia, but I've done it. I definitely to Elise. Oh, you're young, you don't know yet. But the thing is like, we all go through it. I go through it. I go through it where people literally look at me and they're like, how old are you? And when I tell people I'm going to be 40 in a few years, they're like, oh. I'm like, oh, but if I didn't say that, like, you're going to treat me like that just because I'm young. That's not okay. So yeah, I get it. We all go through that though.
Yeah, I think we do, but I also know that in terms of that expectation and how we respond to that, right? So whereas my generation would respond in okay, and just kind of, head down. We might be roiling inside, but just head down and get back to work. Where Gen Z they're like, no.
Yeah.
And then we'll start a TikTok. And then we'll roast you on TikTok. We'll
Right.
roast you on TikTok, and everyone will know.
You're Claudia Conway talking about her mother on TikTok every day. You're like, what in the world?
That is true. That is true.
Very interesting because when you even when you introduced yourself, you said, "Hey, these are my pronouns." You know, you were like, Alexia Suarez, she, her. Like that is a whole shift that Gen Xers are struggling with. And I'll say it for myself, I'm struggling with. Not that in the acceptance, it's always when it comes to that they. My sister and I have this conversation. We're like, no, they is plural. Like there is no, like, it's a plural because we were taught these are the English rules. Like all the rules we learned to follow all the rules. So when you try to say,
and that's Gen X.
Right.
That's Gen X right there.
We were
in a statement right there.
There you have it. Now we know how to break rules, but we sneak and break rules. We don't tell you breaking rules. That's another conversation for another day.
And I think my generation has really tried to bend the rules a little bit more to have people question what's going on in society. Like have these opinions on this important subject. I grew up honestly thinking that it's normal to have conversations about your pay. That's just a normal concept for me. And that's going to like classes and everything and just like understanding that's a concept that is normal. And then whereas I talk to maybe a millennial and they're like, oh my gosh, it's like, I need to be doing this. This is very important. I'm like, I learned that at 12. Come on. Like what's going on? Like that was a bare basic thing, but it's interesting, like generationally, like how fast things have changed and how empowered Generation Z has become just because we grew up in this. This is normal to have the internet. It's normal to be able to just Google anything and have all this power in our hands. And yeah, we use it crazily, but it's like, we're just challenging like the status quo. And I really like that about our generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have us as parents and we're like,
and then my mom's like, take that off Facebook. That is not a Facebook post. You don't need that.
Whatever. Anyway, so we have this comment here. It says, the other thing I feel like millennials expect in the work environment is good work-life balance. That tends to be very important for our generation in comparison to X and boomers. I would say absolutely work-life balance is very important. And I think we're starting to appreciate that more, obviously, as we mature, but it's demanded and expected as a Gen Zer, where, for us, it's a luxury where you're like, no, that has to be a part of the equation. And you were nodding your head on that, Nicole.
Because when I think about millennials, I can see why we are kind of like in this lost space between the two of y'all, because the thing is, it's like, I kind of feel like we are so into ourselves in a sense. It's because we've seen what Gen X went through and we were kind of a part of that. We don't want that, but we see all that Gen Z is doing, and while all that work is great, it's great work, but it's also a lot of work. We're at a point right now because we are burned out. We saw what our parents did and what they went through. We went through it with them for the most part. Then as we entered adulthood, we had all that we had to go through. While Gen Z were smaller kids going through it, we were the young adults going through it. So at this point, we're like, yeah, I want balance. I want to live. I want to travel. I just want to zone out and be okay and not deal with all of the problems of the world because I've been dealing with it since I was born. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw this little graphic earlier. They talked about, so between the Gen X and the Millennial, how, we spend about a third more than our millennial peers. And we really have a value on like premium quality. And the millennial, like, no, it's about the experience. It's about the experience. You spend more on dining out. We spend more on everything else. We like loyalty. And you're like, no, you're about that brand experience and that brand touch point. We like the loyalty program. So I was reading this stuff about that before, we came on. I was like, oh yeah, those are definitely some just very nuanced differences between the generations. And then how that shows up in the workplace is then, how are you providing, these experiences versus, like just the and one of the reasons why we're having such a hard time in COVID is because Gen Xers, this environment showing up in the workplace is tough because we were taught to value that face-to-face, that human touch interaction. And then Alexia's like, how many Zoom meetings can I have a day?
And meanwhile, I'm like, I get to get in some yoga at home, and I get to meditate at home, and I get to chill out at home. So like, yeah.
And
I've been just enjoying it. I got an opportunity to buy a ring light. I'm so excited about it. Like I use it all the time for Zoom calls. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling myself on Zoom. Like I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah. So that's awesome. But this is a funny comment. But when the internet goes down, though, that's when y'all fall apart, and you can't even count out basic change at McDonald's. You're like, and we're like, okay, 11 cents.
Yeah.
It was 1.89. It's 11 cents change. Come on, kid. Come on. Like
I can't tell. I don't know the last time the internet went down, but I can't tell you what I do. Like I think I go on my phone, but then also like that has I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, I've seen it. I've been in a store and it's like, okay, it's not working. So that means you have to count out the change. It doesn't tell you how much it is, but you should be able to count out the change to me. And it's like, and I'm like, okay.
You should be able to do a manual press of my card, although I don't want you to have all my card numbers. You should be able to know what that is and do it. Yeah.
Yes, you should be able to know what it is and do it. Yeah. And you're like, a manual press of a card? You mean it's not Google Pay? Like, what are you talking about?
I didn't know what the manual press was, so I was thinking, like, are you just like, I don't know, like, I was like, are you just writing down the numbers? Like, I really honestly.
No, there's actually a machine that you would put the card on. You put a carbon copy paper, which you probably don't even know what carbon copy paper is, and you would put the card in and it goes choo-choo. And then it has all your information and you sign that. And then if you don't do it that way, you can have the carbon copy paper and you can rub it like this and get the card numbers show up, and then that person can sign it. And then that's what you send in. Yeah.
That's why old people just keep getting scammed. Like, I understand now. I understand. I get the appeal because you're like, everyone's writing down their card number and like rubbing it. I don't understand. Why people are getting scammed on the internet. Everyone stop. Carbon copy. It's not happening anymore.
But that's the way it is. It's just like those simple things.
I learned something every day.
Yeah, there's so many little things that again, when you have you such a heavy reliance on technology, when technology fails, and sometimes it fails, and it may not be that the internet is down. It might just be the electricity is out, but you still have to conduct business. How do you do that?
I know how to do that. See, I can still do that.
See, I entered the working world in COVID, so I really have no idea. I graduated during COVID, so I'm like, I don't know. You get COVID? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that, one of the things that has been a great thing about this COVID experience is though that it has stretched all of us, if whether we're Gen Xer, Gen Zer, Millennial, it has really stretched us. We have learned and grown in so many ways. But one of the things I want to ask is kind of what is your hope for the next 20 years, right? So when you think about the next 20 years, that's the next generation. So that's the generation like that hasn't even been named yet. So for you as a Gen Zer, what are you, when you are my age, right? Because that's the next 20-ish years from now. What is your hope for, socially, politically, the workplace? What is your hope?
I have a lot. I really hope a lot changes in the next 20 years. Just because, I hope we have free education. I really think that's very important, and it pretty much just betters society as a whole. So I really hope education's free. I hope that people get opportunities and resources that they're really not allocated for. I hope that starts happening. I hope housing is a right. I hope that working, there's more accommodations, more accessible, especially following this COVID pandemic. Like, we can see that accommodations can be made, make those. I hope that we are a little less capitalistic in the way that we go about business, kind of mirroring like Europe a little bit. Like, I really hope that it's more of like a balance and understanding of work doesn't have to be your whole identity. You can be other facets and explore in those and grow outside of just work. I hope that the world isn't like this. I hope that we're not so polarized in the way that we see society and how we view people. I hope there's more inclusivity. I hope there's more equity. I hope that the world's not burning because we took we got a hold of climate change and we understand the implications which it has. I hope there's a lot. Yeah, I hope there's just more progressive change, and to where in the workplace it is a place of just acting out another passion rather than just having to go and grind it out and not feel as though you're just not fulfilled. I hope it becomes more of I am a functioning part of society and this is something I value because I am providing for others, and that's awesome. But also it's not who you are, and it's not what you have to be all about. Mm-hmm. And I hope we have that opportunity more to grow and expand ourselves.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's all beautifully said. If you're out there in the comments, I want you to drop down in the comments what's your hope for the next 20 years as well. So we can kind of see different perspectives, and then tell us what generation you're in. Nicole, what about you? What is your hope for the next 20 years?
Well, my personal hope is I'm retired because I should be at that point. But as far as the world is concerned, my son is 4.5, so he'll be 5 in April. So that'll be him in 20 years entering the workforce and, going about life and figuring himself out, finding a mate and all those things. One thing, kind of just to go back, when we were talking about how Gen Z is kind of like the baby boomers and that 70s generation, all that like that. While I do agree with that, I kind of hope that my son's generation is a little bit more like mine, to where we take what Gen Z is giving us, we take what Gen X has taught us, but as far as millennials are concerned, that they take even what we've taught them with kind of self-care and that work-life balance. That balance is really, really important because people are working themselves to death, and there's no reason as to why anyone should have to do that. And I don't want them to do that. I really hope that, again, like me growing up, the whole mixing of, partners and races and marrying whomever you want and doing whatever you want freely and having kids with whoever you want. While we're seeing we still have that, but we're seeing kind of like back in the day, the whole, that's not right. You shouldn't do that. Marry your own race and all those things. I don't want that to be a part of his upbringing, because for me, I feel like I was lucky enough to not have that. It was a time to where no one really, people may have cared, but they definitely didn't tell us to our faces. They weren't putting it out there the way that they are now. So I hope that this is definitely not what he experiences. And for the most part, that he gets to live life happy and free. Like, yes, school, college, if we're going to have to pay for it, we're going to have to pay for it, but it should be free. I do think that there should be more technical schools. I do not think that university college, while it is great, I went to one, we all went to one. There are a lot of tradesmen that make a lot of money. So they do not need to go to school to get psychology degrees and things like that. Everyone does not need to be a lawyer. They can live good lives doing other things. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship, I'm all 100% for. So for when it comes to my child, I will definitely encourage that. I'm working on something right now and he's 4. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just hope the world is a lot different in 20 years than what it is now. I hope it's different next year than what it is now, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, that's for sure. We have a couple comments here. I agree with Alexia. I am Gen Z, and I hope the next generation is even more progressive and accepting of change. We have another comment. Education is free. Everyone has healthcare, housing as a right. The world isn't on fire, and more social inclusivity, acceptance of individuality. And this is from a millennial. And I think that what we are seeing and what we're witnessing, at least here in the, not just in the United States, actually in other places in the world, because Russia is also, people are protesting and in the streets because people want to, they want the, to be self-actualized and have freedom. And we see the last dying gasp of holding on to this perceived power that people actually don't really have, because the people who were actually storming, they actually have no power. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. You know, I think for me, I hope to be, you know, I don't know if I hope to necessarily be retired at that point, because I do believe that I'm living my passion now. I believe that, you know, so breaking out of the mold of, you know, this is the way it has to be done. So those are things that I've learned from observing millennials and observing Gen Zers. And I am adaptable and flexible, but being able to really, for women, y'all have no idea. Like, I literally shed tears when, you know, seeing the night of the, you know, when the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, after they announced, I literally shared tears, because it was like, wow, you know, we will never, the first has happened. You know, there's so many firsts that is still yet to happen that are long overdue. So and for the next 20 years, I hope that we can erase all the firsts. You know, all the firsts, like in this next 20 years, let's erase all the firsts. So, and some of it's happening, you know, but no more first gay, no more first trans, no more first Black, no more first Hispanic, no more first Native, like no more first. Like, I want all the firsts to be over with, so that we can really get on and really just valuing and accepting the brilliance and the diversity that we all bring to the table. That's what my hope is. And then for the workplace, you know, I want equity. Like, it's long overdue, and we're still fighting it. But I'm ready for there to be equity in the workplace, and for us to no longer have conversations about Black women's hair in the workplace. Like, I want those like now. So yeah, that I do have lots of hope for the next 20 years. I have lots of hope for what both of your generations are doing and championing for. And hey, a lot of folks in my generation, like our Madam Vice President, we're in those, like we're there too. We've been trying to get them boomers out the way, so so that we can bust this thing wide open. Let's see, we got another comment here. It says, I also agree with Alexia. I'm also Gen Z. In addition, I have hope for prison reform. I hope we can see people as people who are redeemable and not merely locking them away for their lives. Yeah, that was a tough one, man, right now. You know, because we, you know, many of my generation are still incarcerated for marijuana charges that that now, you know, it's legal in both of your states, you know. Yeah. So go ahead. You're about to say something?
I pretty much just like, yeah, like I really hope for more equity, and especially like within workplace settings in which you're talking about. I hope for more of these opportunities, because coming in as a new Gen Zer, like I'm at the very end, so I'm kind of a little more experienced than the 9-year-old. So I had an
Hey,
opportunity.
9-year-olds are making millions on YouTube. Like they're like real entrepreneurs, huh?
I know. I'm jealous. You know how hard I practice these TikToks, and
their parents are millennials. Don't forget that their parents are millennials, so we're raising some entrepreneurs.
Yes, you are. I will.
But I'm hoping for more of. I'm hoping for more of those opportunities to be open to other generations coming up, because I've had the privilege of being able to take unpaid internships and take positions in which I don't necessarily need healthcare, but there are a lot of barriers that are for especially people of color, of where they need these structural things to be able to function and pay their rent and live, that I couldn't imagine. Like, these opportunities made me who I am today, but it was at a cost. Like, I needed to like sell my blood or do something to like be able to pay for rent. So I'm hoping that's not a thing anymore. Like, unpaid internships, not a thing anymore. I'm hoping for more opportunities for young people to be able to be paid for the quality of work that they're putting in, and not just look at this as like some type of like, oh, you're young, you got to build up your resume. Whereas we just like value them from the beginning, and we are like, you are a contributing member, and to be treated as such based off like not needing all this experience to be able to be paid, in a sense. Like, I want more opportunities for more people, because that's going to create like a better system, cohesive society where we get that representation at the table.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, any closing thing you want to say in closing? I'll toss it to you first, Nicole. We're almost at an hour of having a conversation, and we didn't even scratch the surface. You know, there's so many things to say here. So, you know, we just talked about, you know, kind of what shaped our generation, you know, our expectations in the workplace, and, you know, what of our hope for the next 20 years. So we just like really skimmed the surface, because obviously, you know, people write books on this and have done dissertations on this topic. So, but we just wanted to come give you 3 women who are working together in today's society. And we had our own little, did I tell them our little story from yesterday? And it's like, okay, I'm reviewing what you sent me, and so this didn't happen. Oh, well, I changed it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm confused. It's just, we had this whole little conversation back and forth in Slack. So here I am, Gen Xer, working in the Slack, and I'm like, I'm getting it, y'all, but...
And then meanwhile, what you didn't see, Demetria, was while I was watching that happen, I'm on the back end in Alexia's personal channel, like, you let me know what's happening with Demetria after this.
Right. And I'm just Gen Z mediating it all. I don't understand it.
Yeah, you were like, hey, you were like, well, I did this. And I was like, okay, but that's not what your plan's like. Your plan and your schedule says this. So I thought that would just be in addition to. And you like, oh, okay. But we work through it, right? And I think that's the bottom line. If we just continue to have just that good dialogue and open communication, we can get the best of all of what we bring to the table. Because y'all know, like, because we had a meeting earlier today, I have big lofty ideas.
Meanwhile, I'm like, wait, let's figure this out right here.
I know.
And then over there, like, well, I don't know about that.
I know. You were like, I don't know about that experience. You were like, okay, yeah. So, but it's great because that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier, and then they were talking about old fashions. And I never had an old fashioned drink, and they were talking about like the differences and like if they like this certain old fashioned and some like this ingredient made them like bourbon. And I'm like, I can barely get through a White Claw. Like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, I love my body. I'm putting a seltzer in it. So, yeah, that was a generational change. I was like, old fashioned? Like, couldn't do it.
Yeah. As you mature, you will be surprised what you can do. Your level of stress might introduce you to things you've never been introduced to before.
I made my old fashioned at home yesterday for the first time ever because I really needed that drink.
For sure.
So.
All right. So Nicole, what you want to say in closing about generations in the workplace and how we can make it work?
That together we can make it work. Together, our three generations can do great things. I personally look, and again, with me technically being in the middle, I look up to both, up and down, I guess. I look up to Gen Xers a lot. That's my mom, that's my husband. Like I learned, that's Demetria, that's most of all of our clients technically. I learn, well, I'm not technically learning marketing through them. I learned other things about life and business and how to, Demetria knows I broke down last week and her thing was, I've been through that, pretty much get up and get it together type of thing. So I learned from them. And again, I love working with Gen Xers because of that. But I also love working with Gen Zers because I don't have time to be sitting there going to do research about TikTok. That's why I got y'all. So I get to learn all of the things when it comes to everything that's new that's happening from you guys, because I'm in the thick of the work. I'm in that. I need to make this work so they have jobs. I need to make this work so my clients get, where they need to go. I need to make this work so I can live my life. So I think, again, the generations together, we can do great things. We are doing great things. And technically, it is our generations right now together that are doing great things. Gen Xers are in the White House. You got millennials on their teams. You got Gen Zers now also pretty much on their teams, on their way into their teams and doing all the advocacy work. So together in the workplace, we can make it work. We can do anything.
For sure. What about you, Alexia? What do you want to say in closing?
I agree with that. I agree that we need, as speaking from Gen Z, representing the whole generation, like we need you guys. We're very opinionated. We have a lot of ideas. We have a lot we're wanting to bring to the table, but we are young. Like, there's 9-year-olds. So we are young. We need that assistance. We need that guidance. We need that understanding of our agency and not just writing it off as though you're young, you have so much to learn about the world. There's like X, Y, and Z. You need to go through all of this so you can be like us in a sense. We like from our generation, we need that understanding of like, wow, they want different and that's okay. And we're going to create a better society because of it and not have to re-traumatize another experience. Like, I hope another pandemic doesn't happen ever again. I hope another like 9/11 doesn't happen again. I hope another like huge, which it will happen, but like a huge economic recession won't happen again, because we are working together and communicating and being able to understand and have accountability on when things go wrong and understand that's okay. And Gen Z, like we're quick to hold people accountable. So I think like working together and being like, hey, the world's going to be okay. There's procedures getting through this, but then also the Gen Z of just like understanding that there needs to be some radical change, and all of that can combine to create like a very diverse and also very inclusive society. And we just need each other and accepting that we need each other and not just writing it off as just like, oh, we're just so different, because we all aren't different. We just go about things a different way. And that's what makes us so cool. That makes us all just like, oh, and being able to work together. And that makes it like, it's interesting at times, but then it's also like, there's great quality work that gets done. And it shows because you have all these different generations' hands into a single project. And it's like, makes it just more inclusive and more accepting and just like a lot better.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, one last thing, because I'm on my team, there are, the newest one, she's a millennial, but 2 Gen Zers who I work with every day, all day. And I do, honestly, the one thing that they do for me that I actually appreciate, especially Elise, because she calls me out on it all the time, they are quick to call things out. Mm-hmm. So because they're quick to call things out all the time, it technically makes me take a step back for a second and reassess. It makes me look at how I'm handling things, how I'm talking to you guys, because again, the way I learned to work really is through Gen Xers. I learned how to work through them, but I'm also putting in that whole, the way I want to work type of situation in it, but doesn't work for you guys. Or me not communicating with you because I'm internalizing, keeping everything to myself, doesn't work for you guys. The fact that I expect for you to kind of like me, get up and go. I'm that hustler. I'm that person that has to take everything and control it and just make it work. You guys don't do that. You guys want us to explain it to you. You want us to walk you through it, not in a way to where like baby steps, but you want to understand literally what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if it doesn't make any sense, you don't want to do it. So they technically do kind of, yeah, they not put me in my place, but they do put me in a place to where I do take a lot of steps back to reassess how I'm running my team and my organization with a bunch of Gen Zers. And I actually love it. So I'm not knocking it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I can't thank you ladies enough for coming to have this conversation. Again, it was mediated by us working together. And I was like, oh no, this is a great conversation. This is a great conversation to have, especially with Vantage Point Coaching, because it's all about, life and leadership. And we lead in all those, we lead at home. We lead in society and politics. We lead in the communities, in our schools and churches, and that's what Vantage Point Coaching is all about, is really helping people be their best at life so they can be their best at leadership. And that translates at work. And understanding how we can work better together, have greater understanding of each of our perspectives or paths, or what has shaped us as a collective. Because like you said, hey, there's no hard and fast rules, and it's not all, absolute, because we have regional differences, we have cultural differences, we have all these extra nuanced things, but there are some patterns. And so how do you recognize the patterns about these generations that will help make you more effective as a leader wherever you are leading, so that we can get more great things done? I think we deserve it as a society to get more great things done. And I think as women, especially, shout out to all my girl bosses out there, we are going to be the ones who really push this society, push us forward.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be the ones
always
that
on our backs. It's upsetting.
Yeah. We're going to push.
Always on the backs of women.
For sure. And so with that, hey, go to our website at vantagepointcoach.com and subscribe to our newsletter, right?
Yeah.
That's a private conversation, y'all. Y'all
talk about that tomorrow.
We'll talk about that.
Real time.
Yeah. So subscribe, check us out. Hey, shoot us an email if you have any questions, or you want to have a workshop on generations at work. I've actually done a workshop on this for organizations, for working groups within an organization. Send us an email, contact us, and we can have that conversation. But with that, we're going to sign off. And so y'all wave to the camera. Y'all hold the line, but wave to the camera and say bye.
Bye.